Thank you, Tom. It isn't very often that a statesman in a memorial service has two governors attend a luncheon and another one who couldn't come to write a statement and send his thoughts concerning Pat Vacca. That speaks to the greatness of the man. If you look at the Alabama legislature across the last few years, you can say almost without fear of someone refuting it, Pat was Alabama's last statesman, his greatest statesman. We're very fortunate today to have some of my favorite people. I was not familiar with Senator John Patterson when he was in office, but he spoke to this conference a few years ago, and it was one of the most enjoyable speeches I've ever heard. And Governor, I want you to know I've quoted you all over this state, particularly on your train trip to Tuscaloosa, where they mistake the governor of Alabama for a member of Bryce's. That was one of the funniest experiences that I've ever heard, and every time I think of it, I laugh about it. And it seems that there were a group of people on the train, including some Bryce patients, and when they were counting them, they were one short. They came to him and they said, who are you? And he said, I'm governor of the state of Alabama. They said, come on, it's time to get off the train. So we're privileged to have the Honorable John Patterson.
I'm delighted to be here today and to have the opportunity of reminiscing a little bit with you. I guess I'm the yesterday part of this program, but I do see some contemporaries of mine out in the audience. I see a few of them. I see Roy Smith right down here. Roy came to work for the Department of Public Safety when I was Governor, Tom, as a highway patrol cadet who was 18 years old at the time. So that sort of dates us, Roy. Pat Vacca and I had been friends a long time. I got to know him through my father. My father was in the state senate during the Folsom administration one time, and got to know Pat, and it was through my father that I met him the first time. I came over to Montgomery from Phoenix City to become Attorney General in 1955, and that was the first year of the second Folsom administration. Jim Folsom and I were sworn in on the same day, me as Attorney General and he as Governor. Pat Vacca was in the House at that time from Birmingham, and he became one of the Folsom floor leaders during that administration and had a major role in putting together the highway construction program of the second Folsom administration, which began in 1955 and went on up to 59. It was also during that period of time that I worked with Pat Vacca to obtain funds to assist us in the cleanup of Phoenix City and some other things. I liked him. I found him to be a real gentleman, and it was always a pleasure over the years to be in his company. Now, this organization's been in existence for 25 years, but what I'm talking about now goes back for well over 30 years. But Pat Vacca had a real role in one of the largest highway construction programs the state has ever known, and that was the program of the second Folsom administration. Now, Mr. Vacca, if he'd lived, would have been going on 89 years old. He's been a lawyer, finished the Birmingham School of Law, and in 1937. So he goes back a long way. That was even before I finished high school. Last time I saw him was here in Montgomery when we were inducting Joe Bruno into the Alabama Academy of Honor. And I wondered that day what Pat was doing there. And I found out that he was one of the top executives in Bruno's stores and had been a long-time personal friend of Mr. Joe Bruno. The Pat Vacca was a self-made man. If you look at his record, you'll see that he worked hard all his life to achieve what he got, and he was truly self-made and in a large degree a self-educated person, and made a great mark, I think, on the history of our state. I was looking back to see some of the things that occurred back in 1959 when I came into office. As I said, the road program of the Folsom administration was one of the outstanding achievements of the administration. It was a huge program. It involved a total of about $450 million of construction. Governor Folsom's program was to get people out of the mud, his mailbox roads. I know that you've heard of those. He was a real stickler for his farm to market road program. And it was a big and a fine program, and it was well administered and well done. When I came into office, I wanted to continue that road program. A road program for the state is very important, and it has to be an ongoing and continuous thing, because as the state grows and develops, the roads and bridges become obsolete, and it's necessary all the time to have a good program to upgrade things and to keep it abreast of the growth and development in the state. And this is why every administration ought to have a road program, and of necessity has to have a road program, not only for the business and industry in the state, but to attract capital and also for safety reasons, as you well know. The first thing I did when I became governor, I called a special session of the legislature for the highway program. We needed funds to continue the highway program. And on February the 3rd, 1959, I addressed the Alabama legislature, and I said to them, urban areas are critically in need of relief from traffic congestion. Continued improvement and modernization of our highway system will reduce the wrecks on our highway, thus reducing personal injuries and death. And I went on to point out on that day that the experts were telling us that in 20 years the traffic on our highways would increase by 75%. I think that those projections have been borne out. Governor Folsom had floated a $50 million bond issue for road construction, and out of that had a $450 million program. We floated a $60 million bond issue without any new taxes, and were able to have over a $500 million road program during a 4-year period of time. It was during these 8 years, it was an unprecedented road building time in Alabama. During World War II, there was no materials, there was no steel, you couldn't build roads. Governor Sparks was the governor. He used that time, couldn't build roads, he used the time to pay out most of the bonded debt of the state. And when Governor Folsom came in after the Parsons administration, the state was in good financial condition. And when I came in, I found the state in good financial condition also. At the first regular session of the legislature on May the 5th, 1959, I asked the legislature to appropriate substantial additional funds for the Department of Public Safety. And I did this primarily to get them to work with our highway construction program in order to facilitate a greater highway safety program for the entire state of Alabama. On May the 2nd, 1961, 2 years later, I reported to the legislature on how we were doing. And I said one of our goals in the highway department is to make it easier to drive and safer to drive on Alabama highways. Design standards are higher than ever before, and I can assure you that we are building top quality highways. And then 2 years later, just 10 days before I went out of the governor's office, I reported to them what we had done in the road program. In the last 4 years, we have made vast improvements in the highway system. Our administration is winding up by far the largest, most extensive program in our history, a total of over $500 million. In all, about 5,575 miles were built. The total includes new stretches of roadway, 200 miles of interstate, as well as such improvements as resurfacing, straightening curves, widening to 3 or 4 lanes, building bypasses, and new bridges built during this period, if placed end to end, would stretch 36 miles. Now, I take great personal pride in our road program during that period of time. I inherited a good program from Governor Folsom, and we continued that. And I have to say that, though, reflecting back, that the road building is a continuous, ongoing thing. They're always becoming obsolete, and we always tend to under-design and under-build roads and bridges for some reason. Governor Persons built the first half of the eastern bypass here in Montgomery that runs outside of this motel. It ran through pastures then, and the Montgomery Advertiser said he was crazy for doing any such thing as that. It would never have any traffic on it. Governor Folsom finished that, and by the time I came into office, it had been underbuilt and underdesigned to such an extent that it had torn up, and we had to completely rebuild it at a tremendous cost because it wasn't built up to proper specifications to begin with, because nobody ever dreamed, you know, that we'd ever be sitting out here today in a motel on this highway. We were lucky in one respect, I think, if you want to look at it that way. We found it much easier to build interstate highways in the rural areas because they were cheaper. They were about $500,000 a mile in the rural areas of Alabama. It's much more expensive now to build them in Birmingham and Montgomery and Mobile, and we contented ourselves primarily with acquiring right-of-way and doing the design and getting ready for the interstate program in the big cities. Georgia did right the opposite. They concentrated in the Atlanta area, and by the time they got it finished, it was already obsolete, and Atlanta had to rebuild its interstate system. In a way, we were fortunate because we didn't build our interstate system in Birmingham until some years later when the design was better and it was built to a greater specification and people knew more about where we were going in traffic safety and in the traffic count. So Birmingham really, I think, was lucky in that the delay did happen and that they ultimately got a better up-to-date expressway system than they would have got if we'd have gone in there in the early days and built it. Let me say this in conclusion. It's a pleasure being here, and I wanted to go back and develop this road program for you and to tell you what a part Senator Vacca played in getting this tremendous road program underway. I want to encourage you to continue to push and insist on a continuation of an ongoing road program and bridge program in our state. It's important to have the infrastructure of our state moving forward to stay abreast of the economic development. You can't attract business and industry and capital into the state unless you have a good road system, and a good system requires constant attention, constant planning, constant rebuilding, relocating. It's an ongoing, everyday thing, and it's one of the things the state does that they spend money for that pays huge and tremendous dividends. It's a pleasure being here with you today, and thanks very much for asking me.
It's a privilege to introduce our next speaker, who, one of my favorite people, the man with the $1 million smile. He did something that or caused Pat Vacca to do something that I never did think Pat would really do. The day we were dedicating the Vacca building was already set, and on the day before, Pat called me and said, "John, I can't be there." I said, "What do you mean you can't be there? We're dedicating this building, calling it Vacca Hall. You know you can be here." And he said, "No, my governor needs me in Montgomery to vote on a bill, and I've got to go to Montgomery." We were honoring him. Many of you had been invited, and here he called and said, "Hey, John, I can't come. My governor needs me in Montgomery." The governor sent a helicopter and landed on the Capitol grounds and picked Senator Vacca up, scared him to death. He had never been in a helicopter. The seatbelt wouldn't reach around him, and that scared him even worse. And then when they got up, he turned to the pilot and said, "This thing won't glide, will it?" We're honored to have the Honorable Fob James.
Mr. Chairman, Governor Patterson, and ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to be with you today. To drive from down on the coast to here to honor the memory of Senator Pat Vacca is, for me, exercise of privilege and an exercise of pleasure, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be in your presence for this occasion. Mr. Chairman, I want to say something to you. When you called my name out and started talking about years, you made the clock go in the other direction. I've been trying to find a way to do that now for the last 20 years, and you're the only man that I've ever seen do it, and I want to thank you for that. I don't have the words to express what is in my heart as far as Pat Vacca is concerned, and what his life meant, and to the thousands of people that he touched, and to the examples that he set. Senator was a man of candor, and Senator was a man of compassion. He had a yearning for the safety of his fellow citizen, and especially the youth of this great state of ours. He was not a man of words in the usual sense and in the usual habits that one can pick up from the normal associations around what is known as Goat Hill. Pat Vacca was a man of action, concise, clear, no hesitation, and no vacillation. He knew what he believed in, and he knew why he believed it, and I never saw him hesitate to take the responsibility for what he proposed. And sometimes, I think, as they used to say down there, the flack. I don't know why they called it flack down around the legislature in the Capitol. I never understood that. I worked down there for 4 years, and I never saw the first good fist fight. And Senator Vacca and I used to sit around and laugh about that. We really did. We had many a laugh about so-called pressures that I don't think either one of us felt in any way. He was that sort of fellow. He believed in a bill he called a child restraint bill. He sent that thing to me, and I looked at it and read it, and I had some questions about it. We were sitting there. He said, "Senator, this bill, what about its constitutionality? And how are we going to force it?" You want me to ask Jerry Shoemaker to get a flashlight and stick his head over every time he sees a child in a car? What's with this bill, son? He looked at me right straight in the eye, and I could see those eyes firm up. He says, "Governor, you are too young to understand. Sign the damn bill." And I signed the bill. When he retired, we had a little problem. The law of the land required the chairman, the safety council, be a legislator. The senator retired. It was obvious to everybody that we should not allow him to leave this post for that reason. So John Draper, I think, drafted the bill, and we just changed the law. It was that simple. I might say we changed the law, we drafted the bill, I introduced it, and it passed in the House 105 to zip. It passed in the Senate 35 to zip, and I did not have anything in 4 years to nearly approach that before that happened or after that happened. He kept wanting me to inspect the Roebuck Center of Youth Services. And the senator had sent the numbers down, and you could always rely on him for that. He had a wonderful head for the economics. And I never saw him sponsor anything where the economics were not right and where he could clearly define the payback to the taxpayers of this state. I don't remember what the pressures were that particular week or so, but he wanted me to get up there, and I had a number of commitments. So I said, Senator, the only time I can get up there would be Saturday about noon, thinking he would say, no, I'll just see you when I get back down there Tuesday. Before I got the words out of my mouth, he says, how do you want your sandwich at noon Saturday on the Roebuck campus? So I had no choice but to go there and meet him at noon. We walked all over that campus. We walked under that campus. We counted the beds in that campus. We counted the kids in that campus. And when we got through, I was begging the senator to draw up his bill and put in the dollar amounts and let me get back to Montgomery and do what he had asked me to do to start off with. I give you those occasions, try to convey in a sense, and in a serious sense, what Pat Vacca was all about. He epitomized public servant. The man was totally unselfish. The gentleman was totally fearless. An example that I think all of us that knew him and loved him certainly learned from him. So, in closing, the tradition and the legend of Senator Pat Vacca as a statesman will live for a long time in a lot of our hearts. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be with you at this hour to celebrate his memory. He was a good one to ride the trail with, and I'm awfully fortunate that our paths crossed for a short 4 years. Thank you very much.